UFC Vegas 76. These are the full card predictions and the betting breakdown. Main event, Marvin Vettori fights Jared Cannonier. Looking forward to talking about each of the matchups. Make sure you guys smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Turn the post notifications on and make sure to share the video as well. Also note, full card fight companion live 7 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. Do not miss it. And let's get into the first fight. It starts off, we have Modestas Bukauskas versus Zac Pauga. I'm picking Modestas to win this fight. I see him as the way better fighter. Pauga's best chance here is to hold Modestas against the cage for the entire fight. I feel like Pauga has okay stand-up, and I mean, obviously he did fairly well on The Ultimate Fighter, but that was against like really mid-level and slow heavyweights, whereas Modestas actually's got decent speed, lateral movement, nice kicks, good punches, a bit of power in his hands. And he's also, kind of been through the ringer of hell. He had a bad run early in the UFC, got released and fought his way back, and then beat Tyson Pedro last time out, which was a, pretty impressive upset win for him. Pauga also got chinned really bad against Mo Usman. Now, I'm not saying that Modestas has that same type of power, but we know Pauga can be chinned. I also look at his fight against Jordan Wright. That kind of exposed to me he's not a great striker. He's more of an athlete who can land strikes at times, but is going to be more comfortable pressing against the cage. In my opinion, Zac Pauga is kind of like a much lesser version of an Eric Anders. And note that he's 35 with just 7 professional fights. I got to go with Bukauskas, the much more experienced fighter. He's also 29. I think he's hitting his peak now and getting better for sure. And also note this, on the Pauga side, he's looking to clinch up and hold. He has 0 takedowns landed in the UFC. So it's not like he has good wrestling. He literally is just good at smothering people against the cage. Bukauskas can fight there. He can find ways out of those spots. And he's definitely the more dangerous fighter of the two. I do think Bukauskas could end up chinning him. I feel like I'm going to pick knockout in this matchup. Now, would it blow my mind if it goes distance? No. But Bukauskas should be the pretty clean winner. So we're going him for the win by KO. Bukauskas is minus 163 as the favorite. Pauga sits at plus 143 as the dog. I like Bukauskas. I'm confident that he wins, and I feel as though there's a real chance for him to get a knockout here. And man, this momentum just continues to go upwards for him after that nice Tyson Pedro W. Next fight on the card, we got Ronnie Lawrence and Daniel Argueta. I'm going to pick Ronnie Lawrence with a fair amount of confidence here. I just feel like he's so much more well-versed than Argueta. Argueta's a southpaw. I mean, he's got some decent wrestling and strength, and he can come forward and pressure guys. But someone like Lawrence, who also shines in the wrestling department, no, not the traditional wrestling background, but MMA wrestling, and then has a smooth stand-up game to go along with it, I think that he's going to be beating up Daniel Argueta for most of the fight. Little bit longer, little bit taller, not significant here. I think he's got the clear-cut striking speed advantage and the wrestling defense to fend off Argueta's attacks, and maybe even landing some takedowns of his own. I can see Lawrence really opening up with the strikes and then finding takedowns on Daniel Argueta, who technically speaking might be the better pure wrestler of the two. But Lawrence, the better MMA fighter overall, the better MMA wrestler, and he's going to be the winner here. I do think that Argueta's tough, and I say he goes distance and loses on the cards. Lawrence to win is minus 170. I got Lawrence getting it done. Argueta plus 145. Yeah, I think Ronnie Lawrence bounces back. He fought Salikhov, Kakramanov, and lost. There's not a lot of shame in that. He's an absolute savage prospect, and I feel like Lawrence is still a pretty solid fighter. 31, not super young to be, considered a prospect, but a good fighter. And beating an Argueta, I think, real good chance here. So we're going Ronnie Lawrence to win. Next fight on the card, the ladies going after it, Tereza Bledá and Gabriela Fernandes. I'm going to be picking Tereza Bledá. Now, if you guys remember, when Gabriela Fernandes first popped onto the UFC scene, scheduled to fight Jasmine Jasudavicius, I mentioned how much I love her striking. I think Gabriela Fernandes is a really nasty kickboxer, but damn, the ground skills are super mid-tier. You saw Jasudavicius run her over with wrestling pressure and control. Now, Jasudavicius fucked up Miranda Maverick using wrestling and showed she's, a bit of a high-level girl. Tereza Bledá, though, is going to follow that same game plan. I see Bledá with pressure in the grappling, landing takedowns. I don't feel Fernandes has the takedown defense, and I also feel she might be a little bit too accepting of bottom position, which is a major no-no. They also have a common opponent in Edna Oliveira. And there was moments in the fight. Edna Oliveira is getting on top of Gabriela Fernandes. Edna Oliveira looked like an amateur when she fought Tereza Bledá. Bledá is a level better in the grappling department, and she's also very tall at 5'9" with a 71-inch reach. Similar frame to Jasmine Jasudavicius, who put it on Fernandes. Expect a similar fight. I think Tereza Bledá goes out there and gets it done by a unanimous decision. Yeah, Fernandes, unfortunately, is just more of a striker. She lacks the takedown defense. She does got tremendous body kicks. She's a southpaw, but I just see her getting bullied in the clinch, taken down. And due to the deficiency with the height disadvantage and reach disadvantage, I do think Bledá will be fairly competitive on the feet. And when she gets a hold of her, it's such one-way traffic. It's not even a close fight. Minus 260 Bledá, plus 220 Fernandes. I'll tell you guys this. There's a real chance of Bledá putting her on the ground and subbing her up. But I'm going to pick win by decision here because Fernandes is fairly defensively sound as far as pure jiu-jitsu goes, but she is going to be getting out-positioned and dominated this fight. I don't see it as competitive. It's wide lines, though. Like we said, what is it at? Minus 260 to plus 220 for Gabriela Fernandes. So big favorite, Tereza Bledá. She's going to win the fight. Clearly the better grappler, clearly the better wrestler. And I think in the striking department, yeah, she's not going to have as slick of stand-up. She's got a range edge and such a significant grappling advantage that Fernandes will be gun-shy. If I'm the UFC, after this one, hopefully they keep Fernandes around and you give her a striker. I actually think she's pretty good. It's just these matchups are nightmare city for her. Next fight on the card, we got Felipe Bunes versus Zalgas Zhumagulov. I'm picking Bunes to win. I think he's going to be able to stop the takedown attempts of Zhumagulov. I feel like he's going to be able to outstrike him on the feet. Bunes has a ton of experience. He's a Pitbull Brothers fighter, so obviously he trains with Patricky and Patricio Pitbull. He has a really solid 1-2 with a ton of speed on it that I feel like Zhumagulov in the striking is going to get touched with. And ultimately, Zhumagulov is a wrestler, but he's not a great wrestler. He's got decent wrestling pressure. Obviously, we know he has a fuckload of split decision losses in the UFC. I think Bunes is going to be able to defend off takedowns. If he's on the ground, I think he finds ways back up to his feet, and he's way more dangerous in the striking. Zhumagulov, I'm never impressed by him. I mean, I like him. I think he's fun. He's got the Paddy Pimblett haircut. He's a likable dude, even though I don't know if he speaks a lick of English. Bunes is just a more dangerous guy. Now, if you look at Bunes' most recent loss, you look at the name, he fought Jussier Formiga. In the first round, he defended on the ground pretty well against Formiga, ultimately got submitted by rear naked choke. Zhalgas Zhumagulov is not near the level on the ground of Jussier Formiga. He does not offer that type of submission threat. So I really feel like here Zhumagulov's only way to win is grinding pressure for 3 rounds. But Bunes is fairly defensively sound. He'll create space and strike. And he does have a lot of experience fighting some rushes. You see at EV, he's got some OVs that he's fought previously, being Bunes. And it's close decision losses. So ultimately, I don't think you can write Bunes off here. I think he's very live. I see him winning the fight. I think he can touch Zhumagulov on the feet and maybe even hurt him. As far as method of victory, I think he's got the power to get the KO, but I am going to say decision. I respect Zhumagulov, overall. So I think we go long, and it's going to be a win on the cards for Felipe Bunes, a.k.a. Felipe Silva. Plus 125 for Felipe, and then Zhumagulov minus 145, the favorite. I'm going dog on this one. I'm going Bunes to win it by a decision here. I like that dog pick a lot. Next fight on the card, we got Carlos Hernandez and Denis Bondar. I'm going to pick Denis Bondar in this fight. I actually feel like, you kind of write him off from the bad debut against Malcolm Gordon, but he's got a slew of experience outside of the UFC and like pretty quality competition level. He's also a strong grappler, and I feel like Hernandez is pretty decent in the wrestling department too, so I'm going to be interested in seeing how the two match up, but Bondar a little bit technically superior as far as his grappling game, though I think Hernandez can wrestle a bit, box a little. I feel like Bondar is just better with positional control and movement, and he's also got a win in his amateur career that now stands out. He's got a win over Steve Erceg as an amateur, and we just saw Steve Erceg pull off a wild upset on 8 days' notice against David Dvorak. So Bondar's been in there with, a savage, and he got a win regardless of how long ago it was. It's still a W here. And also Bondar's a guy that likes to work towards finishing. He'll throw some ground and pound. He'll pass. He'll beat you up a bit. I do feel like him and Hernandez is not a wide differential in skills, but I think Bondar does a little bit more, and I'm going to say he's going to get it done on the cards and right that wrong of that UFC debut. So I'm picking Bondar to beat Carlos Hernandez in this fight here. As far as the odds, Bondar plus 105, Hernandez minus 125. You can see the most recent fight, Alan Nascimento subbed up Carlos Hernandez. Bondar is not near the level of Nascimento on the ground, but seeing that someone was able to really get to Hernandez and control him and then strangle him, I think Bondar can get some control time. So I'm going Bondar for the win. Feeling like decision, though. Next fight on the card. I like this matchup a ton. It's Kang versus Cristian Quiñonez. I'm picking Cristian Quiñonez. He's a violent motherfucker out of Entram Gym. And I like him in the stand-up. Though I respect Kang's stand-up game, he's pretty smooth and slick. I feel like Cristian Quiñonez is definitely more powerful than him, and I can see him landing hard strikes and kind of getting Kang off of his rhythm. With Kang, something about him is I think he fights well at more of a technical pace, whereas Quiñonez can definitely bring that early pressure and make it more of a junkyard dog scrap, which will favor him by landing more significant strikes. Now, Kang has never, ever been chinny, and he's also got a very solid jab, too. He's technical. I'd say he's patient. I see this as a competitive fight going long. 3 rounds, back and forth. Quiñonez takes it on the judges' scorecards and, I think gets a pretty key win. I mean, you look at his first UFC win, Khalid Taha, he knocked him out brutally. And then you look Contender Series W. You can see for Kyung, though, he's been around forever. Dana Batagra win, lost to Ronnie, who's just a pure grappler. And you see some close decisions here. I think that Quiñonez beats him on the cards. As far as the lines for Quiñonez, minus 160 as the favorite is Quiñonez. Kang plus 140. I feel like it's going to be a good striking match. I just think Quiñonez is a bit meaner too. He'll come inside, throw a bit harder. Kang will try and fire back, but he's going to get out-touched here. So we're going Quiñonez for the win, and I do think we'll see the scorecards here. Unfortunately, I want to see knockouts. Next fight on the card, we got Jimmy Flick versus Alessandro Costa. I'm picking Alessandro Costa to knock Jimmy Flick out. Listen, guys, I was very high on Jimmy Flick early on. Excuse me. This was when he beat Cody Durden. I said, oh shit, Jimmy Flick. He retires from the sport. He says, I want to be a family man. Then years later decides, I want to come back. He got beaten up against Charles Johnson. Rather early stoppage in that fight, but he still was getting beaten up there. And he's known for knockout losses. Jimmy Flick has been chinned a fair amount of times throughout his career. He has 5 KO losses, which, in my opinion, when you match him up now with a powerful Muay Thai striker, he's in trouble. Costa's going to chin him. I'm going Alessandro Costa. That overhand punch is devastating. He's got very nasty calf kicks, and he's also physically strong too. Listen, you can't really freak out on him for his UFC debut loss to Amir Albazi, who's, a top 6 contender in the flyweight division. Jimmy Flick is a substantial step down, and if Costa can get going on the feet, he's terrifying. Flick is good off of his back, but I don't think Costa's going to be easy to submit. Flick's a long guy. He's got a height and reach advantage here, but I also think with that thinner frame, he's a little bit susceptible to damage to the face, so I think big punches by Costa are ultimately going to win him the fight. And even though Flick is long, if he has the guard position and Costa's on top, I think the shortness of Costa and his stubbier limbs is just going to make it harder for Jimmy Flick to get a hold of anything. Like Flick trying to shoot up an armbar or a triangle. I don't see that working here. I think Costa is a dynamite prospect who's wanting this so fucking bad. Whereas, Flick left the game for a while. And I don't think he's the same. And you know what? I think he's in big trouble here. I think he's getting chinned. I think Costa's got some devastating flyweight power, which is not a common thing that you see in the flyweight division. Minus 240 for Costa. Flick at plus 210. Give me Costa. Give me KO in impressive fashion. And I think we'll be jumping up and down with this one. Next fight on the card, it is the featured prelim. It's Raoni Barcelos and Miles Johns. I'm picking Raoni Barcelos to beat Miles Johns. I know 4 months ago, it was like a devastating knockout loss for Barcelos, but it was against Umar Nurmagomedov. Can we really knock him for that? And if you look at Miles Johns' last few opponents, beat Vince Morales. I know Barcelos could handle a Morales-level guy. John Castaneda beat, Vince Morales by sub. I think that Barcelos beats a guy like a Castaneda. Anderson Dos Santos win. Kevin Natividad win. He got nice KO power. And then years back, we're looking at Mario Batista. Ultimately, Raoni Barcelos, I feel like for the vast majority, is going to be beating guys that are, lesser tier bantamweights. That's not to say that at 13-2, Miles Johns is not good. He's pretty solid, but he's outside of that top 20. He's outside even of maybe that top 25. He's more in that, top 30, top 40 range. And Barcelos is great at beating those guys. Now, Barcelos is older at 36, and ultimately there was a lot of comparisons to him and Jose Aldo. And, I can see those comparisons being made, but Barcelos getting to the top level of the game too late. I don't think he has the reflexes to compete, on a real top level at this point. But that's not to say he isn't very good. He has a nice skill set. I feel as though his Muay Thai is nasty and he hits with a bit of power in his hands. It's ultimately about, does he find the power shot? Miles Johns is a guy who's very athletic and explosive. He comes from a wrestling background, but he's fallen in love with striking. Barcelos definitely has the capabilities to chin a Miles Johns. I definitely can see a knockout here. But after a KO loss at 36, I feel like Barcelos is going to be fighting with a rather intelligent game plan here. Instead of overly extending himself to try and get a vicious knockout, he'll take his time, be patient, pick his shots. Maybe Miles Johns shoots, Barcelos counters, gets on top of Miles Johns, and then we see a dominant decision. So I am going to pick Raoni Barcelos to get a dominant decision. I just think this is the type of fighter that Barcelos shines against, even at 36. Listen, I know Umar Nurmagomedov chinned him, but do not write Barcelos off just because of that one. He's taken some L's, but ultimately, Barcelos is still a very dangerous fighter. In matchup like this one, I just see him as way better, and he's going to end up beating Miles Johns. He's just a better technical fighter. Barcelos is minus 240. Johns plus 205. I got Raoni Barcelos dominant decision win in the featured prelim of the night. And that brings us up to the main card. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash that like button. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. It's Muslim Salikhov and Nicolas Dalby. I am picking Muslim Salikhov to win this fight here. He's definitely more dangerous than Nicolas Dalby, but Dalby is just annoying to fight against because the dude is just constantly throwing and moving forward, and he's also fucking stacked. He's got a frame on him. He definitely can take power shots. Salikhov hits harder and is definitely way slicker and precise with his stand-up as opposed to Dalby, who throws a lot, but ultimately is more well-conditioned and volume-based as opposed to like a guy that you're like, wow, he's got crisp technique. Dalby's going to dog his way through fights. He brings nice forward pressure. He's strong in the clinch against the cage. Ultimately, I think Salikhov is going to be able to keep moving, create distance, create some big moments for himself and hurt a Dalby, but know that Dalby's not going to be slowing down. I feel like he's going to be coming after Salikhov. I still think Salikhov beats him. He snipes him with shots. Like, I just can't pick Salikhov by KO. I would love to. I mean, Salikhov has some KO wins, but he's also got a fair amount of decisions. He got the KO against Fiallo. Ultimately, Dalby's a super durable fighter, And I'm going to say that Dalby goes the distance with Muslim Salikhov here, and Salikhov edges him on the cards. He looks better. He's definitely the better technical fighter. It's just Dalby's like junkyard dog tough. So I can see how people would be like, yo, maybe Dalby's got a shot to just press him. But no, don't pick against the OV. I'm not picking against it here. Though Salikhov is a Kung Fu OV rather than a Dagestani wrestler, I still think Muslim Salikhov for a clean win. I'll say decision. Salikhov's a minus 180 favorite. Dalby at plus 155. Yeah, Salikhov, win by decision. Good fight. Starting off the main card. Next fight on the card, it's Nicolas Motta versus Manuel Torres. I'm going to ride the Manuel Torres train. I'm going to say he chins Nicolas Motta. Now, I've spoke upon Manuel Torres in, it's not a negative light, but I've spoke of some concerns that I have with Manuel Torres. One of which being he very rarely is out of the first round. Now, ultimately, his only losses are like weird submissions. He's not shown any bit of issues with the chin. But what does Nicolas Motta show? He can get chinned. Guys, look back on Nicolas Motta's career. He has KO losses in the first round, not just UFC level. Jim Miller got him in the second, but other fights. He got chin bad. He gets clipped with a hard shot and he goes out. Manuel Torres is literally all power, and I think he's going to bait Nicolas Motta in a brawl. Nicolas Motta is going to shine in fights where guys fight him at a controlled pace. When you start bullying Nicolas Motta, and then he's forced to slug power back, that chin's going to open up, and Manuel Torres is going to lay the hammer on him. Torres is going to flatline Nicolas Motta, guys. It's going to be a brutal KO. I'm going Torres, and I'm going first round knockout win. I respect Motta. He's got tight kickboxing. He's got a mean left hook. But ultimately, against Manuel Torres, I think he's in big trouble. The pace differential is a big factor, and I think Torres gets another KO win for the resume. As far as the odds, Torres is minus 179, Motta at plus 154. So we're right in the Manuel Torres side. I think he gets the knockout here. Motta, good fighter. He's got a solid stand-up game, but I just really think this matchup with an all-action pressure brawler is going to cause Motta to break. Manuel Torres by KO. Motta doesn't have enough tools to counter that attack. We're going Manuel, first-round knockout. Next fight on the card, Pat Sabatini and Lucas Almeida. Dog tough fight. I'm picking Pat Sabatini. And I think that there are going to be people that like Lucas Almeida as an underdog. And I wouldn't say you're crazy for it because he's a vicious striker. But note that his takedown defense is okay at best. He has been taken down outside the UFC. And we haven't seen a ton of it because he's fighting all strikers in the UFC. Now, you're literally throwing him a pure pressure grappler. I gotta say, I think Sabatini's gonna land consistent takedowns, pressing Almeida against the cage. If it wasn't for Sabatini quickly knocked out against Damon Jackson, let's say that fight never happened, I think that everybody's gonna be all aboard the Pat Sabatini train. But because of that loss, people out there are gonna be selling themselves, listen, Almeida can chin him. And I know he can. Almeida's a vicious striker. I like Lucas Almeida. He's a tall guy, 5'11 to 5'8. He's got, a little bit of a reach edge, only 1 inch, and he's definitely the more vicious striker. But ultimately in a fight where I see it as a significant striker versus grappler matchup, and somebody's like, oh, but Almeida's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Okay, Pat Sabatini is a Pan Am champ and a black belt in jiu-jitsu. There's a little bit of a level difference when they hit the floor, and also the wrestling skill set of Pat Sabatini. He's strong as fuck, and that stocky frame is so good for the style that he has. Gets inside of Almeida, pressing him against the cage, constantly looking for takedowns and top control, and I think he gets himself a unanimous decision. Now, could Almeida create some space and chin him? Maybe. But Pat Sabatini really should win this fight. Almeida's tough as fuck, so he's a live underdog. He's 14-1, so he's a live dog for sure. But he's, in my opinion, at a significant disadvantage in the grappling, enough so that I don't think he can get his striking going. When you have someone across from you that can take you down, no one want to say at will, but most of the times they shoot. If you ain't sprawling hard as fuck, if you ain't near the cage, you're on your ass. I think that your striking is now limited. I think Lucas Almeida will offer less striking offense because of a substantial takedown advantage for Pat Sabatini. We're going Sabatini for the win. He's going to beat Lucas Almeida here and give him his first UFC L. Sabatini's minus 180. Look for him to bounce back. Don't write him off because Damon Jackson chinned him. It's not over yet for Sabatini. Plus 155 for Lucas Almeida. Fun fight. Striker versus grappler. I'm going with the grappler, Sabatini. Next fight on the card, the featured bout of the night, Christian Leroy Duncan and Arman Petrosyan. Guys, I got to take a sip of coffee to warm up for this one. I'm picking Christian Leroy Duncan. I'm a big Leroy Duncan fan. I think he's a tremendous striker who's extremely dangerous from long range. And now you match him up with a guy who's also an awesome striker. Arman Petrosyan can kickbox, but he can be chinned. He has been chinned before. He's at a disadvantage as far as athleticism goes. And I don't think, as good as the striking is for Petrosyan, I don't think he has good head movement. He's there to be hit a bit. Close decision with Gregory Rodriguez. Hard fight against AJ Dobson last time out. He's got some W's. I mean, we can't absolutely shit on him. Kyle Brow's a grappler. That fight is not even to worry about. That's a different stylistic matchup. Leroy Duncan is looking to kickbox. And I think that he is going to land some hard shots on the face of Arman Petrosyan. And what's going to be a fairly competitive battle, I think that the range advantage for Leroy Duncan, I think he's got pretty good athleticism. I do think he is a little bit of the harder striker. Petrosyan might be the harder kicker, but I would say overall strikes, punches specifically, I'd favor the Leroy Duncan side. I can see Petrosyan getting caught with a big punch, getting stunned, and then Leroy Duncan following up with a KO. I'm going to go Leroy Duncan by knockout, but I wouldn't bet the house on the knockout prop because I feel like Arman Petrosyan, we got to give him some respect. He's a dangerous kickboxer, and he's coming to fight. He's not here to lose. He's not some salami opponent. He's 7-2. He can fight. But I think Leroy Duncan finds that chin. And that range advantage, I am loving for him in this fight. Leroy Duncan, knockout. And he's a fighter to get excited about at middleweight. If he can get past Arman Petrosyan, sky's the limit. Minus 175 range for Leroy Duncan. Petrosyan plus 150. The dog. I'm going Christian Leroy Duncan for the knockout win. Good fight. Co-main event of the evening. Arman Tsarukyan and Joaquim Silva. It doesn't matter here. Silva's an OG vet, so I don't want to shit on him, but he's getting destroyed. This is not a close fight. Arman Tsarukyan is one of, if not the most feared lightweights in the world. Yo, you want to fight Arman Tsarukyan on short notice? Nobody's accepting the call. Frivola did once, respect to him, but he's not taking it again. Arman Tsarukyan has that, controversial decision loss to Mateusz Gamrot. Before that, the only one is what? Islam Makhachev and him having a close fight? I see Tsarukyan towards the top of the weight class soon. Silva is literally a tomato can opponent. It's not that Silva's an awful martial artist. It's just one fighter here is actually a UFC contender, and the other one is not close to a UFC contender. Maybe could have been a UFC washout. I mean, let's fucking look at Silva for a second. His last 3 fights, all right? Nasrat Haqparast knocked him out. Okay. Rick Glenn knocked him out. Okay. He beats Jesse Ronson. 3 fights. Would those guys have any shot with Arman? No, they'd all get killed. And Silva's going to get absolutely ran over. I think Arman Tsarukyan might beat him up on the feet, eventually find himself on top, and just pulverize Silva. I respect Silva for taking the fight, but he's kind of a dead man walking here. I think this could be a brutal finish for Tsarukyan. It shouldn't be competitive. This fight should end in the first round. There is a level difference in skill set. This is future title challenger versus someone who is a decent fighter. I mean, Silva can throw. He's got a bit of power, but he got chinned by Ricky Glenn, man. Come on. He's got no shot. Arman Tsarukyan is going to murder him. This is one of the biggest mismatches in the sport. Minus 1,100. That's real. It should be minus 4,000 at this point. It opened at fucking minus 1,000. Plus 725 Silva. Silva has no shot, guys. There's a 0% chance. I think 100 times out of 100, Arman Tsarukyan beats him. This is going to be a beatdown. Now, the odds are terrible, but Arman Tsarukyan is probably the most confident pick of all time in this fight. I mean, if you got $1 million to throw, get yourself $100K right here. This would be it. Now, I'm not really advising anybody to do that because, maybe he fucking sprains his ankle as they go to touch gloves and Silva somehow wins. But pretty much 100 times out of 100, Arman Tsarukyan is going to toy with Silva. It's not going to be close. First round TKO, bit of striking, maybe drops him with a punch and then ground and pound follow-up. Maybe he decides to take him down and pulverize him. If he wants to strangle him, maybe he does that. But I don't think Silva's got the chin to hold him up. I think Silva's going to get chinned before Tsarukyan would even have a chance to strangle him. So Tsarukyan, knockout in a fight that realistically should not even be happening. This is crazy to me. It's like the level difference is fucking wild here. But respect to Silva taking the fight. Main event of the evening. If you guys haven't, make sure you smash the like button. And if you're new, subscribe. It's Marvin Vettori versus Jared Cannonier. I am picking the Italian dream, Marvin Vettori, to defeat Jared Cannonier. Something I love about Marvin Vettori is the crazy gas tank and the constant forward pressure, as well as the freakish durability. Roman Dolidze is a savage, and he was cracking Vettori. I know it was all a controversial decision. Ultimately, Dolidze is probably the most nightmare matchup for Marvin Vettori because it's a guy that's taller and longer, is jacked as fuck and hits hard, and also is an A1 tier grappler. Jared Cannonier is shorter than Marvin Vettori. He is pretty quick on the feet and explosive, but besides the Derek Brunson knockout, it's not like he's chinning everybody. All right, that Brunson was a year and 3 months. That's Derek Brunson. Different level. Marvin Vettori has a high pace and pressure. Cannonier is coming over off the split decision that was kind of controversial against Sean Strickland. I think that Marvin Vettori is going to be moving forward. I think he'll catch him with some left hands. I think he'll back Cannonier up against the cage, get some control time against that cage too, and maybe even land some trips from there. I can see Vettori finding top position in this fight because stylistically it's favorable. Cannonier hits really hard. He's explosive, but I think Vettori is going to be moving him backwards. If you look, I mean, Marvin Vettori went long with Paulo Costa, taking some of Costa's best kicks, and he keeps coming. Whatever happened with the Dolidze fight, ultimately he was the victor at the end of it. He took a beat down from Robert Whittaker. Obviously, Adesanya beat him, but Vettori is right up there in that top tier. And note something else. There is a near decade age gap between these two. Cannonier is about to be 40, Vettori at 29. Vettori's still improving. Jared Cannonier at this point, I believe, is holding on to his skill set. And somebody who was extremely athletic and explosive earlier in his run at 39, I do expect him to slow down a bit. Maybe not this fight, but shortly. 5 months ago was the Strickland split decision. At times, Cannonier's gun shy. Vettori's going to be in his face attacking him. Ultimately, I think even if Cannonier gets a bit of striking going, Vettori's going to find ways to tie him up, press him against the cage, wear on him, tire him out, find a couple of trips, punch him in the face from the top. And then even in the striking, I see Vettori landing a bit of left hands and touching him, man. I'm going Vettori. I'm going to say Vettori takes it on the judges' scorecards. I feel like it's going 5. I respect the level of both these guys, but Vettori should edge them 4 rounds to 1. Even 5 rounds to 0 wouldn't blow my mind here. I'm going with the Italian dream, the stallion, Marvin Vettori, who's a slight underdog at -105. Cannonier at -115 as the favorite. The pick here is going to be Marvin Vettori to win the main event. He defeats Jared Cannonier. And Marvin Vettori is kind of in purgatory for right now as far as being a title challenger at 185 pounds because he lost to Adesanya. He lost to Whittaker. I don't know. He's in a weird spot. But he's going to be at the top of the weight class still. He's going to be winning fights and ultimately making that money. And he's not even 30 years of age yet. So Vettori for the win in the main event. UFC Vegas bringing the heat. Once again, we got a nice card. I'm excited for it. Fuckload of fights. I'll be live for the entire thing. I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. Definitely let me know what you think of the picks in the comments. Throw me some of your favorite picks on the card as well. If you got nothing to say in those comments, as always, drop a W in the chat to boost the algorithm for your boy. I hope you guys enjoyed the full card predictions. I'll be dropping content all week long, so make sure to subscribe, turn the post notifications on, and stay tuned. Thank you all, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace, everyone.